Hey you. It's good to see you again, but what are you doing here? Okay, whatever. Come see what I've been up to. This is my latest work. It's to find out how speedrunners are so fast these days compared to 2 years ago. But I'm not quite done yet. I'm gonna need your help to unpick my results, and then we'll see if things start making sense. So I want to find out how run completion times of ranked matches have changed over time. Our first playoffs champion, Silver, had a 12:20 mean completion time in Season 1, but now the majority of his games are sub 10 minutes. I could just plot every completed run on a graph, but there are over 2 million ranked games now, which is far too much data for me to process. So instead, let's take a sample of roughly 3% of matches played since the inception of ranked. In front of you is about 16,000 hours of playtime spanning over 2 years. To be clear, every point on this graph is one completed ranked run, positioned by completion time and when the run happened. The color of each dot represents the elo of the player who completed the seed. With all that said, what do you notice? One of the first things which I noticed is this absence of matches in February last year. This was actually just due to some server outages which Redline eventually fixed, but it's pretty cool to see it show up on this graph. Secondly, the color of the dots seem to pulse as we move from left to right. This is of course due to elo resets upon new seasons, where everyone above 1200 elo has their elo reduced. The last thing that's clear to me is how dead Season 2 was. Not really sure why this is the case, maybe all the top players went back to RSG after one season of ranked, but on the right side of the graph we can see that the density of matches, or at least match completions, has never been higher. Now we can slide a massive moving average over it for a much clearer idea of how players have really improved. I'm gonna be fully real, I have no idea what business this spike in Season 2 has being here. This isn't a bit, I just genuinely don't know. You guys can tell me where all the top runners went. Moving past that, we can see that median completion time has dropped by about 3 minutes, looking at the end of Season 1 median to end of Season 7 median. This definitely holds some value with regards to the question of how much are we improving, because we can see the player count is increasing, so it's not like bad players are leaving the game. If anything, in recent months there should be a bias to pushing the median time up, because of all the new players that have been joining ranked recently. The conclusion? We are getting faster. Oh, you thought we were done? I'm going to distill this using my magical stats powers into separate ranks. Be mindful of the lower sample sizes for Netherite and especially Iron. You know what, screw all of you who are Iron right now, you have ruined my graph. The bump in Season 2 is still present, even when filtering by skill level. This probably means that it's not just because high elo players went off to go play RSG or something. I just don't get it. The middle 3 ranks have all made clear, significant improvement in much the same pattern. Near to the end of Season 7, the Netherite average was pushed under sub 10 for more than a day or two, for the first time in the history of ranked. There's one more interesting but expected thing too. At every season end, we can see the average of Emerald or Diamond drop a fair amount, since the players who still manage to be at those elo ranges are better than the previous set. And then there's also the seed types. I'm going to mark some pretty significant events here which I think could have affected things. Overall, we have Village as the slowest and Buried Treasure as the fastest. This makes sense because Buried Treasures are only accessible to those who are good at the game, 1200 elo and above, whereas Villages are most common for people who are lower elo, so there's a fair amount of bias there. But instead of comparing the seed types to each other, I'm going to compare how they get faster or slower. In December, there were seed type distribution changes which meant that top runners would now get every seed type equally, 20% for each one. It looks like this had a meaningful impact on the village average, since a much higher proportion of villages were being ran by better players, dropping it down by around a minute for good. Around 2.5 months ago, there were also massive seed changes, for the most part buffs, which seemed to drive averages down just a little bit further. In the grand scheme of things though, these external factors don't affect things that much if my assumptions in correlating them are even correct. So all seed types are just improving generally, perhaps Buried Treasures a little bit more than the others. But at the end of the day, it's the outcome of one match, or a series of 7 matches in the case of grand finals, which really matters. I mean, this is ranked. We're racing against one other player, not against the whole player base. What is the make or break point in a run? Where do players most often lose time to their opponents? And in the context of playoffs, how can commanding leads be shattered in a single split? This is the second question we'll try to answer today. Let's start small and just look at never enter times of matches. We can analyze how one runner falls behind another across the hundreds of thousands of games in Season 7. Holy moly. I love high sample sizes. To put us on the same page, if I entered another 23 seconds behind my opponent, the bar at 23 seconds would have its height increased by 1. Even with second-wide intervals, we're looking at thousands of games hidden away in each bar. Okay, anyway, let's actually talk about what we have here. Of course, it's most common to have the same overall split time as your opponent. Ranked does matchmaking by skill level, after all. We can see the graph slowly peter off as we move towards time losses on the order of minutes. Only 38% of never entries in matches are within 20 seconds of each other in regular ranked. Now, I wonder what this sort of thing looks like when the best in the world are facing off. Oh, that's convenient. This distribution is much tighter, much more jam-packed around the 10 to 20 second range. Almost 3/4 of pairs of playoffs overworlds are within 20 seconds of each other. So obviously the matches are a lot closer in this environment, but how does the rest of the match play out? These are box plots. They're representing the same data as before, but in a slightly simpler form. Here's a rundown if you don't know what they are. The two tail ends of the box plot are the maximum and minimum values of the dataset. In our case, the maximum value is way off to the right somewhere, but we don't really care about it, and I haven't really done any outlier filtering. Meanwhile, the actual box part of the box plot represents the interquartile range. This is mostly what we're interested in, and it's bound between the 25th percentile and the 75th percentile of the data. The yellow line in the middle is the median. It's the exact middle point of the data, but hopefully you already knew that. Oh, and by the way, we're looking at normal ranked matches again, not just playoff ones. So what do we have here? Bastions are the most variable, and that makes sense because people die a lot on them and they're a very long split. Okay, that's one issue. Some splits are just longer, and so will have more impact on the run. There's another issue with this too, and it's the fact that I've separated Fortress and Blind. Some players blind early, which can cause the Fortress split to be a lot smaller than their opponents, even if they're not actually ahead. Let's fix both of these at once. I've now combined the Fortress and Blind split, and then scaled every split by how long they take. If they take longer, I've scaled it down. If they're a faster split, then I've scaled it up. Now I can really see the most impactful stages of a run, however minuscule they are. Pretty much immediately, we can see that strongholds are the make or break point of a ranked match, having a vast amount of impact compared to how short the split usually is. The combined Fortress and Finding Stronghold split actually end up being one of the smaller sources of variance. Let's check back on our playoffs data. Of course, everything is tighter, as we saw before, but the variance of the Stronghold split sticks out even more than before. I guess, no matter how good you are, the intrinsic randomness of finding the portal room can sometimes just screw you over. I'm Netty, and I've been your host of this season's stat segment. If you liked it, there's a whole catalogue of this kind of content over on my channel. I also want to start streaming on Twitch a bit more regularly, so if you feel like supporting me, drop me a follow. Best of luck to the players today, and enjoy the show.